Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into one of the most pressing and, honestly, most complex macroeconomic mysteries of our time. We're talking about the global distribution of wealth and income. This is a topic that literally touches all of our lives, shapes our societies, and drives global policy. I am absolutely thrilled to guide you through the data, the core concepts, and the fascinating economics behind the whole shebang. Now, I want to grab your attention right out of the gate with a truly staggering statistic. 73%. In India, the richest 1% of the population owns approximately 73% of the country's total wealth. Meanwhile, the poorest half, they own just 1%. Seriously, let that sink in for a second. It's an incredible figure that instantly highlights just how massive the economic divides in our world can actually be. Okay, let's dive into this. First, we're going to look at the reality of inequality. Then we'll compare income versus wealth. Next up is measuring the divide, followed by asking why does inequality exist, and finally, we'll unpack the government toolkit to see exactly how policymakers respond. Section 1. The reality of inequality, a world of extremes. To truly grasp the data, we really need to look at these stark visual contrasts of the modern world. On one end of the spectrum, we're seeing immense financial accumulation at the absolute top. Think of Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, who back in 2019 was the richest person in the world, or the leading billionaires across Asia who have built massive, massive fortunes. This level of top-tier prosperity is visually striking, right? It represents an incredible concentration of assets. But we instantly have to contrast that prosperity with a jarring reality. Millions of people in Asia and Africa are surviving right at the international poverty line, and we're talking about less than $1.90 a day. Often, this means living without access to basic human needs like clean running water, healthcare, or education. It is quite literally an entirely different economic universe. Section 2. Income versus wealth. Knowing the difference. So the crucial point is, to properly diagnose these global issues, we need the right economic vocabulary. And that means cleanly separating income from wealth, because in the economics world, they mean very different things. Think of income as a flow concept. It's like a flowing river of earnings over a period of time. Wages from your labor, rent from your land, interest from your capital, or profit from a business. Wealth, on the other hand, is a stock concept. It's a static reservoir of assets built up over a lifetime, like owning a business, property, or shares. Basically, income flows in, and wealth is the pool it eventually fills up. And what's really fascinating about wealth is how differently it's acquired around the world. In many high-income regions, like the UK and the European Union, a massive chunk of wealth is actually inherited, just passed down through generations of wealthy families. But if you look at Asia, specifically countries like China, India, and Malaysia, their richest billionaires largely built their fortunes from the ground up, through new enterprise and e-commerce over the last few decades. Section 3. Measuring the divide, the Gini coefficient. Now, to solve any problem, governments first need a scoreboard to track it. Enter the Gini coefficient. This is a numerical measure used by economists to show exactly how unequal income distribution is within a specific country, and it operates on a super simple scale. A score of 0 represents a utopian, perfect equality where everyone earns exactly the same amount. A score of 1, well, that means complete inequality. A single person holds absolutely all the income and everyone else gets 0. Most countries sit somewhere in the middle. Applying this scoreboard globally reveals some super interesting trends. Check out Lesotho in the low-income column, sitting incredibly high at 63.2%. China, an emerging economy, is at 46.5%, and the UK, a developed economy, is down at 32.4%. Now, some economists argue that emerging economies typically face higher inequality than developed ones, often using 45% as a benchmark. But looking at this data, you kind of have to ask yourself, does the reality on this scoreboard fully support that view? It's definitely something to think about. Section 4. Why does inequality exist? The root causes. Having seen the scoreboard, we've got to shift our focus to the diagnosis. What underlying economic illnesses create these deep divides? Well, it generally comes down to a few root causes. A lack of formal job opportunities and poor vocational training means people simply can't find work, or they don't have the skills local industries actually need. Also, when a nation underinvests in education and healthcare, its people can't build essential human capital. Then you have physical barriers, like weak infrastructure. I mean, if you have poor roads and no electricity, businesses just can't run. Finally, low savings and a lack of access to credit mean that even if you have a great idea, you can't get a business loan to pull yourself out of poverty. It basically becomes a trap. Section 5. The Government Toolkit, Policies and Interventions. So, what's the cure? Let's explore the prescriptions governments use to try and redistribute wealth. The first tool in the kit is the minimum wage. This is a legal floor set by the government, ensuring an employer cannot pay a worker below a certain hourly rate. The goal is pretty straightforward: protect workers and improve basic living standards. However, its major limitation in low and middle-income countries is that it completely misses the massive informal sector, where jobs just aren't registered or regulated by the government at all. And this brilliantly illustrates the primary economic criticism of the minimum wage. Notice the natural equilibrium wage at W. But when the government artificially raises that wage up to W1, it becomes more expensive for employers to hire. As a result, employers only want to hire the quantity of workers at Q1. But the higher wage makes a larger quantity of workers, way out at Q2, want to work. That gap right there between Q1 and Q2, that represents unemployment. The next tool is transfer payments. This is tax revenue given directly to individuals without exchanging any goods or services, so no production takes place. Now, the debate here is absolutely fierce. Supporters see transfer payments as a direct lifeline for poverty reduction and creating a fairer distribution of income. Critics, on the other hand, argue that things like unemployment payments might actually discourage people from working, leading to lower overall economic output and inefficiency. To give you a very concrete visual of a transfer payment in action, take a look at food coupons. Governments distribute these to ensure that the most vulnerable groups in society have guaranteed access to basic nutrition. Another really common example is child benefits. This is an essential safety net aimed directly at lower-income families to help offset the heavy costs of raising a child. All of this brings us to our final major tool: taxes, specifically progressive income taxes, where higher earners pay a proportionately higher percentage of their income, sometimes up to 80% for top earners. Governments also use inheritance taxes on passed-down wealth and capital taxes on asset gains. Now, while these directly narrow the wealth gap, economists point out a real risk. If you push taxes too high, you might disincentivize hard work or accidentally drive your top talent and businesses right over to countries with lower tax rates. And finally, governments take those tax revenues to provide essential goods and services directly to the public. By offering things like free education and free healthcare, governments bypass the market entirely. The focus here is strict equity, guaranteeing a basic standard of living and opportunity for absolutely everyone, completely regardless of what their family's income happens to be. Which brings us to the end of our explainer. And I want to leave you with a rather provocative thought inspired by Malaysia's 50-year economic strategy. They managed to significantly lower their Gini coefficient, but the gap between the absolute top earners and the rest of the population still widened. So I ask you, is it better to have a more inclusive, equal economy, even if it results in a slower overall rate of economic growth? It's the ultimate trade-off, and one every society must weigh. Thanks for joining me today, and keep questioning the world around you.